My name is Dong Pan. I'm from the from the SAP Customer Experience Group based in Vancouver, Canada. So again, welcome to today's session on creating Lumira visualization extensions with Web IDE. So some of the content that we're going to talk about today is future versions of Lumira. So there is definitely some forward-looking statement and a future build of the software that's going to be released soon. So that's why I need to show this legal disclaimer. And then the agenda that we're going to cover today is largely a demo, but I will first talk about the new visualization SDK for Lumira based on Web IDE. And then I will go ahead and do a demo on how to create a new visualization extension by converting an existing D3 chart into a Lumira visualization extension. And then I will also introduce you to the new extension management capability in Lumira Desktop. That's going to be available in Lumira Desktop 125. And then I will spend a few words on how you can migrate your existing visualization extension projects to Web IDE. At the end of the session, I will also show you a few examples of Lumira visualization extensions that was built by Web IDE. So I'm hoping that some of you have attended my last session in June last year, where I demonstrated the creation of a Lumira visualization extension using a population pyramid chart as an example. So what I'm going to do, so for those folks who attended that session or who have already watched my video on YouTube or SEM, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat the same example, but this time I'm going to use Web IDE. So you see where is different in that entire process, and you can definitely see that familiar feeling of how you can create it with a different tool, but with pretty much the same procedure that you're familiar with. For the folks who haven't attended the sessions in the past that I did, or who haven't watched my video, I'm also going to do this from an end-to-end perspective, so you are not going to lose anything. But whenever possible, I'm going to talk about what is the difference. So for the folks who already have some experiences with VizPacker. All right, without further ado, let me get started. All right, so first let me talk about this new SDK. So now we can, as in the screenshot, we can use SAP Web IDE to create visualization extensions for Lumira. Well, not just for Lumira, actually. You can also create the same visualization extensions for Design Studio as well. So basically, well, if you are not familiar with SAP Web IDE, it is a great tool that's in the HANA Cloud that can use to create web applications, including visualization extensions for Lumira. This capability was introduced last December, and in the course of last few months, we have made a lot of enhancement and stability fixes to make it not just a functional parity to the existing VizPacker utility, but also some enhancement that the built-in VizPacker utility doesn't have. Okay, so it's a pretty modern tool in comparing to the small VizPacker utility in Lumira. So it has it's a great IDE. It can help you with JavaScript code completion, syntax validation, and code beautification. So that's some of the reasons that you might want to switch to a more modern tool like Web IDE. So for myself, I've often spent a lot of time just to structure my code, make sure I have the right indentation, so I can see the code in a more structural way. But in the past, this was done pretty much just manually. But with Web IDE, you can just use some editing functions to make that happen automatically. It saves a lot of effort. And also, the old VizPacker only supported Chrome, and with the new Web IDE or VizPacker plugin for Web IDE, we now support not only Google Chrome, but also Firefox and IE 9+. There is also another big plus of shifting to this new tool, which is the browser debug tool support. Well, we could use browser debug tool in the past with the built-in VizPacker utility as well, but we had a pretty bad situation when you have an issue and the browser debug tool would report a line number for the errors that was occurring correspond to your line number in that IDE environment. So it was pretty hard to figure out which line was actually causing the problem in the old VizPacker utility. I myself spent a lot of time pinpointing the culprit line, but with this new Web IDE, we have a new full screen mode of for preview, where the DOM structure of the visualization extension, the JavaScript code were not dynamically concatenated into a global DOM structure. It is more independent, so whenever an error occurs, to see the right line number of the code. So that would save you a lot of time for developers. I did talk about this in my Web IDE introductory blog that I have put on SEN recently. So take a look at this blog and where I talked about the ease of debugging and a modern JavaScript editor as the main benefits of using Web IDE as a visualization extension development tool. So you don't worry about writing down the URL of the blog. I will show you all the links that I showed in this session at the end of the slide deck. All right, and also the other important thing to shift to Web IDE is that we are making all the feature enhancement to the SDK into the VizPacker plugin for Web IDE only. So things that have been in the pipeline include custom properties for your charts and also data filters for your charts, which will become available or plan to be available in the upcoming release of 1.25 of Lumira Desktop. All right, so well, for the folks who haven't done this much in the past, so you don't have to start to build your Lumira visualization extensions from scratch. I would say maybe 80% of the cases. There are tons of resources on the internet on various charts that you might have never thought about. So one of them is a D3 website. D3 stands for Data-Driven Documents. It is a JavaScript library for manipulating documents based on data. It excels in creating SVG-based charts or visualizations. And most of them you can easily transform into a Lumira visualization extension. Okay, so take a look at that website, and you can find thousands of great charts and eye-opening charts which you can import or convert into your Lumira desktop using the skill set that you are going to acquire today in this session. Okay, well, we do need to have some prerequisites from a technical perspective and also from a knowledge perspective in order to complete the tasks here today. So to use Web IDE to create visualization extensions and to use it, you would need SAP Lumira 121 or later. If you would like to also use the new capability that I talked about managing extensions with a UI in Lumira Desktop, then you will need to use the upcoming release of Lumira Desktop, which is 125. I would still prefer Google Chrome as your browser for the Web IDE environment, but of course, if you would prefer other tools like Firefox or IE9 Plus, it's free for you to choose any of these. You would also need a HANA Cloud Platform account in order to connect to Web IDE, which is a cloud-based development tool. Well, so you can actually refer to the the Web IDE Getting Started guide in order to get a free trial account or a free trial developer account. Okay, so this is a pretty straightforward process, which is beyond the scope of today's session, but I would like to show you this. If you encounter any trouble in trying to register account, take a look at the help document here. All right, so let me get back to my slide. And knowledge-wise, you will need to have a good understanding of JavaScript, of course, HTML5. If you know jQuery, that will be a good plus when you try to grasp D3 or data-driven documents JavaScript library. And you will need to have some basic knowledge about SAP Web IDE. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a demo of creating a new visualization extension and then manage it and use it in Lumira Desktop. So all the major steps have been documented in this slide. So I have put the screenshots, and slide and descriptions in this slide deck for you as a reference. So after the session, if you forget any step, you can always refer to the slide deck. But what I'm going to show you is, as I said, is the population pyramid chart. So, so the population pyramid chart, briefly, it is basically kind of a bar chart or column chart that you use to show the distribution of age groups per gender at a certain point of time in history. And the traditional, let me close this off. The traditional population pyramid chart should look like this. So it shows in this chart the blue bars represent the male population for different age groups. Definitely on the bottom, that's the younger age, like the baby age, and on the top, that's the older age people or seniors. And that's why usually the babies have the most population, so it looks like a pyramid. And on the pink side, that represents the female population for different age groups. What we are going to work on today is a variant of this traditional population pyramid chart. And the reason for that enhancement is that in the traditional chart, it's kind of hard to compare which gender has more or less population than the other because they are not overlapped. It's hard just by looking at it when they are close in population. It's hard to compare. So in this new chart, sorry about that. So in this new chart, the male population, the bars that represent the male population and the female population are overlapped, and they are also made semi-transparent. So so the portion or the area where they overlapped will get a combined color. In this case, the light purple color. And if you see the blue color topping the bar, that means that for that age group, the male population is higher than the female population, and vice versa. Okay. So this chart originally comes from this a D3 example, which you can find on the D3 website that I mentioned. It's a pretty cool chart. It also shows you the chart in history. So not just for the year 2000, I can use my arrow keys to go back and forth into history. So if I click on the left key, I will go into the history. If I click on the right, it will come back to a later point in history. Okay, so the source code should look like this. This is the HTML code that includes the CSS, a built-in CSS or cascade style sheet, and the JavaScript code. It is based on D3, based on SVG. Okay, and this is the CSV file that it uses to get the data from. This is actually the U.S. population for the last 150 years. Okay. So this is the chart that I'm going to convert into a Lumira visualization extension using the SAP Web IDE. So the first of all, you would need to log on to the HANA Cloud Platform. So since I've already got my account set up, I'm just going to click Log On. It's tied up to my SAP certificate, so I don't have to type in my username and password, which is convenient. So right now I'm signing up to the SAP HANA Cloud Platform cockpit. In a moment, you will see. Let me close this off. You will see a main menu. So here I'm going to click on my subscriptions. It will show you a list of applications that you have subscribed to, but for me, Web IDE is the only thing that subscribes. So if you are going to set up your account, the Web IDE will become the default subscribed application for you as well. So I'm going to just click on the Web IDE link, and here it gives me the URL to Web IDE. All right. So it will load up the Web IDE development environment. All right. So let me close these off. This is a population pyramid chart that I created earlier, but I'm going to create a new one. Okay, so it's just like a development tool that you run in your own desktop environment. It gives you all the possibilities that you can have on your desktop. So similar things like that you would do with any other IDE is that you create a new project in the first place. So that's what we are going to do. So I'm going to click on File, New, New Project from Template, and I'm going to choose Visualization Extension. Okay, and then I'm going to click Next. Project name, let me call it Population Pyramid Chart. Okay, and click Next. So I'll call it will let me set up some basic profile information for my visualization extension. So I'm just going to call it Population Pyramid Chart, and I'll give it an ID. The ID has to be unique. So the naming convention that we suggest is that you use your company name as Viz, EXT, representing Viz extension, dot extension name. So I'm going to just call it population pyramid version. I will leave it as 1.0. A company name, a URL to your company, and a description. Let me just call it an innovative way to do population pyramid. Start. Okay, you click next. So the next step, if you have used the built-in VizPacker utility in the past, this should look to you familiar. So here we are going to set up some important chart properties. So the first thing is, for the plot area, what technique you want to use to draw your chart. Do you want to use a div or you want to use an SVG? So I'm going, since this chart is based on SVG, I'm going to use the default SVG option. But if you would like to use the div option, take a look at my other blog on SCN, where I showed you how to create a Hello World visualization extension, which is based on a div technique. Okay, this also takes you through the entire end-to-end process of creating a visualization extension. Okay, so this link is also documented in at the end of the session in the slide deck. Oops. Okay, so for the title, we definitely need a title. I'll give it a default title of population pyramid chart, which you can definitely always change as an end user when you consume the chart. I will take the default position and alignment for the title. I don't really need a legend, so I'm going to uncheck the legend option, and then I will click next. And next step, you are going to define your data model, which is probably the most important part as a developer. So it is a different user interface than the old VizPacker utility, but the idea is really similar. So you upload your sample data. It doesn't have to be your end production data. It can be a very small subset of your data in a CSV format. Okay. Then, of course, the next thing that you're going to set up is to indicate which columns are dimensions, which columns are measures, and which dimension set or measure set they belong to, as you did in the old VizPacker utility. In most cases, the VizPacker plugin would recognize what are the dimensions and what are measures. But in my case, this is not happening because all my dimensions, which is year, age, and sex, they contain numeric data. So the tool automatically considers them as dimensions. So that's what I'm going to change. I'm going to change them into dimension, and only leave the people column as measure. All right, so let me go to the next step. In this step, I'm going to set up my dimension set and measure set. Okay, similar to the old VizPacker utility. So I'm going to change the name of the dimension set to x-axis, since I'm working on a column chart. I'm also going to change the measure set to y-axis, and I'm going to add year, age, and sex into my dimension set, and people into my y-axis measure set. And now we have our data model set up. Okay. All right. So once I click Finish here on this confirmation page, I'm going to start coding. Okay. So all the steps following this would be very, very similar to the VizPacker utility built into Lumira desktop. So you see this render function, which is in a separate render.js file, and there is also a default CSS file under the style folder where you put in all your Cascade style sheets. So if you are developing a simple chart, I would say 100% of your work will be done in these two files. All right. So, and you might have also noticed on the right-hand side there is a preview panel, which you, if you used Web IDE in the past, you probably didn't notice this. This is new in the later version of Web IDE, where you can see this visualization extension preview button. You can also turn it off if you need more realistic here. Okay. So, if you have already defined your or created your visualization project in your VizPacker utility built into Lumira desktop, what you can do is you can simply just copy and paste your existing code into the render function and into the default CSS file with zero code change. So nothing has to be changed. If you have already an existing project, you just want to port it to Web IDE, then there is no code change necessary. Okay. But if you are doing this from scratch, so what you are going to do is basically two things. You need to just hook your non-Lumira chart or the D3 chart that we see, for example, the population pyramid chart. You just need to hook up this code into Lumira environment, which means two things. You need to hook it up for the data feed and also hook it up to the canvas that Lumira is going to provide to you. So that's what we are going to do. In the old VizPacker utility, it will first retrieve all the chart properties, but in the Web IDE version, we don't have that. So we always, if you are working on a SVG-based chart, you probably always have to do this. So I've just put it into a notepad for convenience. So you are going to do this first to set up your canvas, and then hook it up to your external chart. So you can see that it's a pretty bad format when I copy paste the external code into Web IDE, but I don't worry about it. So because I have this beautify function, I can just click on Edit, Beautify. It will automatically structure my code. Okay. Oh, there is some stuff here that's not perfect, which I'm going to change a little bit. Okay. Okay, this looks better. All right, and then this is your familiar width, height, color palette, properties, etc. that you saw in VizPacker utility. Okay, and this Viz variable serving as your drawing canvas. Okay, so the next step that I'm going to do is to copy over this JavaScript code from the original chart. So this is, I'm just going to copy this entire JavaScript chunk into Web IDE. Okay, so let me do a beautify first to make it look better. All right, so of course it doesn't render yet. We need to make some changes. So first of all, anywhere in this code that references the width and height, we need to make sure it connects to the actual width and height in Lumira. So I'm going to, let's say, use this width from my original width variable, and for height as well, I'm going to replace that static number. I need to change this to a semicolon, of course. Okay. And then I'm going to use this as the canvas. So this is the SVG element that we're going to draw up our chart on. So we don't need to do this once more because we already have that canvas. So I'm going to replace that whole 3 lines with this viz variable. Okay. And then, so the next thing is that we will need to basically hook it up with the data that we have, right? So the data should come from Lumira. So we don't need this line to load data anymore. The d3.csv, which is the data loading part in the original chart. So I'm going to remove that and the corresponding brackets, okay, which is listed here. Okay, let me save it. Okay, and let me also copy the CSS or cascade style sheets into the chart or into the default CSS file. Okay. All right, let me save it. So let's see what happens if I try to preview it. Okay, now the chart already renders, but it gives me a kind of a bluish background. Because the reason of this is once you render a chart in Lumira environment, it connects the chart area into a global DOM structure where you have all kinds of global cascade style sheets in force. So what we need to do is to make our cascade style sheets as specific as possible in order to override the global style sheets effect. And that's what I'm going to do now. So the first thing I'm going to do is to give my rectangulars with a unique name or unique class name. Let me just call it SAP Viz Extension Population Pyramid. I'm going to copy that for all my rectangles. Okay, so let me refresh it. See, oh, so now we don't have that anymore. The reason is we need to make sure that we make this corresponding changes in our JavaScript code so that it is able to find all the rectangulars. So all the rectangulars are created here, so let me add the attribute class with my class name. Okay, when I add that, I don't need the dot notation, right? So let me refresh that again. Okay, so now you can see the chart is rendering fine, and so going to try to preview that in a separate window. So if you worked on Web IDE in the past, you know this. You can use different resolutions to view the chart, but now you can see the chart renders pretty fine. And also the left and right arrow keys are working fine. The chart's response to the keys down event, and it will go up and down in the history. Okay, pretty cool. And so let me close that off. For the sake of time, I'm going to follow some best practices, but not going through like typing everything, right? So let me go into an existing project where I'm going to show you what other changes that I have to go through. Okay, so this is my existing chart that I built earlier. So the render function and the cascade style sheets as a best practice as namespace or add a namespace to all the classes or the CSS selectors so that it doesn't conflict with any other chart elements or the global cascade style sheets anymore. So of course you have to make all the corresponding changes in your JavaScript code like this. So all your classes that you will refer to in your chart, you have to add this namespace. It's a little bit of work, but it's manageable. Okay, and the other thing that we want to do is to, well, we kind of did it halfly, is that hooking up to the data from Lumira. So we already removed that data d3.csv loading line, but at the moment that code was tied up to the exact data structure or the exact column name of our sample data. So as a common best practice, you would like to be as independent from your data structure as possible. And in Lumira, in this ready-made project, I've also introduced some of the API usage of the data. So I added the data.meta variable, and where I retrieved the names of the dimensions and the name of the measure. So I put all the dimensions in the dims variable and the population, the Y measure variable. And then later on, instead of calling it, let me see here, here in the original source code, it says d.people equals to d.people, things like that, or d.age. And here I've changed it to dy measure, or dims, the first element in the dims dimension set. This decouples your chart from that data structure. So if you later on, when you use the chart in your Lumira desktop environment, you want to use a different data structure but contains similar data, you would still be the chart would still be able to interpret that data and render your data properly. All right. So once this is done and you see that the chart is rendering fine, you can go and click on the pack button in the toolbar. It will basically download your chart extension into your Chrome environment, and this as a zip file. Okay, I've already had it, so I'm not going to copy that into a different folder. So then the next step, you're going to use that this extension. With Lumira Desktop 125, you are now able to import or manage your extensions using this file extension or extension manager UI. Here you can see a list of extensions that you have already imported manually. You can also see extensions from the SAP Marketplace where you can download, like for example the SAP Universe Query Panel. All right, so I already have a number of extensions, including the population pyramid chart. So I'm not going to re-import it, but let me show you how this can be done. So click on the manual installation chart and go to your extension package that you just downloaded from Chrome, and which I already have. So just click on that zip file, click open, it will then load it to the extension manager. You do need to restart Lumira Desktop in order for the new chart to take effect. Okay, so to save time, I'm not going to do that. So let me close this off and create a new new Lumira story. So I'm going to use a similar data for the U.S. population, but I'm going to use the data in a different format, where I have year age, where the year age have the first letter in uppercase. And also I've changed the column sex to gender and the column people to population. Similar data, but different column name. And let's see how our newly built visualization extension can handle it. So I'm going to create this data set. And your extension should show up in this group of custom extensions in the Visualize room. So I should choose the population pyramid chart. And I'm going to put year, age, gender as my dimension, and population as my measure. So you can see that the chart is rendering fine in Lumira, and I can also click on or press the left and right arrow keys to navigate back and forth in history. And pretty cool. And if you later on made a some enhancement to your chart, you can always update it by going back to Extension Manager and click on the manual installation again. Make sure that your new chart, the new version of the chart, have a different version which is higher than the original version. Then the Extension Manager will overwrite the lower version of the existing chart and will import the higher version of the chart automatically. Okay, you can always remove them if you don't want them anymore. Okay. Okay, so that's pretty much my demo. Let me go back to the slide deck and let me talk a little bit about a few important points. Well, you do see this entire walkthrough of the steps, and a few things to keep in mind as a best practice. So as I said, namespace all your CSS selectors to avoid your chart being affected by the global cascade Excel sheets, and also vice versa. So because in Lumira all your charts are embedded into a global DOM structure, your CSS selectors can also impact the entire Lumira runtime environment. So it is very, very important that you namespace all your CSS selectors uniquely. And again, avoid hard coupling between the code and the data structure, just like what I just did with the population pyramid chart. I'm not using the static column name, and instead I dynamically retrieve the name of the dimensions, the name of the measures, so that it can cope with different data structures. Okay, and also let me also talk a little bit about migrating your existing Viz extension projects to Web IDE. And as I said, there is no code change that's necessary if you have already built your extensions with the built-in VizPacker utility. So the overall step would be you create a project definition in Web IDE. Although it has a different UI, but it's very, very similar to creating a project in the built-in VizPacker utility. You create a project, you define the layout and data model, and all these are very similar to the old tool. And then, of course, for the SVG-based charts, the Web IDE is not automatically filling the initial few lines where you retrieve the chart parameters like the properties, the color palette, etc. You can always just keep it, say, here for convenience. So this few lines can be used to retrieve those basic parameters in your chart, and you can just put it into at the beginning of your render function, if you are working on an SVG-based chart, of course. And then you can just copy-paste the rest of the code from your render function, from your style sheets, into the render function or the render.js file and the default CSS file. No code change is necessary. And I'm actually going to show you some of the example charts that I showed in my last session last year. I remember I did the core diagram, the Sankey diagram, the force-directed graph, and the stacked column chart with an overlaid line. I did that with the old VizPacker utility, and now I have migrated all of them into Web IDE and imported them into Lumira Desktop without any code changes. So hopefully this would make your migration process a little bit more smooth and less painful. Okay, so now we have 12 minutes left. I do just want to point one thing out, which is the visualization extensions on GitHub. So if you need to consume or use or enhance any existing charts on for Lumira, you can always come to the GitHub SAP Lumira repository and find all the visualization extensions there. Most of the charts there are currently built by the old VizPacker, and some of them probably by you guys. And I would encourage all of you who have already contributed to the GitHub to migrate all your extensions into Web IDE and republish them into this repository. Okay, so that's all for my presentation. I would like to now open up for questions.
Okay, thanks, Dong. A great presentation, and there are a few questions that have been submitted. I'll just go through them right now.
Okay.
So we had a question from Haytham saying, can these visualization extensions be deployed to Lumira server as well?
Yes, definitely. So this is actually not a new feature. So in the with Lumira Server and Lumira Desktop version 1.17, which was released last May, I believe, Lumira Server can start to manage visualization extensions. So it was actually covered by my last session in June last year. There was some catch there, so what you can do, the supported scenario is you can create a Lumira story in Lumira Desktop based on the Lumira visualization extension, and then publish your story to Lumira server, where the same extension have already been uploaded to. But if you have already a story, you want to add a new chart on Lumira server directly using the Launchpad, then you can now use that extension as a chart. So any chart extension-based chart have to be published from Lumira Desktop to Lumira Server. So that is the supported scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And there was a question from Shane earlier, which I answered, will a HCP account be required to use Web IDE, or will you provide free public access? So I pointed him to a URL where you could sign up for a limited trial developer license. I think you covered that. I'm not sure if you also had a page, or you covered earlier some useful URLs, Dong.
Yes, I did mention that. That's at the end of the presentation. You can find all the links to my blogs and the landing page of various resources. You can find more information on this topic. And to comment on the earlier question about the HCP or HANA Cloud Platform account, you do need an account, but you can sign up for a free trial account. We have my colleagues who work in the Web IDE area are also working on plans on making, basically a community version of the HCP account just for Web IDE users. So stay tuned. In my blog here, this blog, I did connect to one of my colleagues who work in the Web IDE area. So stay tuned on Rascorn's blog. He will probably have some more information on the HCP account sign up process. But right now, if you just want to play with it, you can always sign up the free account, the free trial account, by following this blog referred to from my Hello World blog. So these are all documented in the slide deck at the end of the presentation here. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Dong. A question which is from Vitali. The current Lumira production release is 1.23. When is 1.25 planned to be available? I already responded that the plans are any day soon, but do you have any further elaboration on that?
Yeah, it is planned to be released any day soon. So you answered that perfectly. So we are in the final stage of the validation program. Once that's done, it will be released. So it was scheduled around by the end of April, if everything goes smoothly.
Okay, thank you. Question from Shane: are there pros or cons to developing an SVG chart over div or vice versa?
Okay, sure. Well, SVG is, well, I would say, for me, I would consider this more from an existing chart perspective. With SVG, there are definitely more charts available on the internet, so you are not going to build charts from all over from scratch. But definitely charts based on div or HTML5 canvas are also becoming more and more popular. As you have seen, we support both SVG and div, so you can choose whichever way that you want. If you are building anything for SVG, then D3 would be I would say the preferred chart JavaScript library, because it has a very powerful data binding capability for SVG-based charts. D3 is automatic. Is a built-in library. You don't have to import your library. You can simply just use a built-in D3 library in both Web IDE and Lumira Desktop. And to answer Jack's question, yes, you can use other libraries as well if you want to.
Okay, thanks. There was a question from Haitham saying, will the other scenario be supported where we would like to use an extension directly in Lumira server versus publishing from desktop?
That's currently not supported yet. It was in our roadmap, so that's definitely something that we know about. But at the moment, with the current release, 125, it's not on at least it's not on 125 yet, as we are working very busy to get the Lumira server for BIP ready. But definitely this is something that we are considering. Well, so the trial account is for developers to get familiar with the technology, but it's not intended for productive use. So meaning you cannot use that extension created with the trial account and deploy that to your production environment. You will need to have, well, at the moment, as I said, a paid account, but we are also thinking about having a community version of the Web IDE access. We're working on it, so stay tuned. You will find more information. But maybe a quick takeaway would be it would be either a free account, like a free trial account that you can play with now, or a paid account, which is not super expensive. It is a pretty affordable license model, as I understand it, as a technical person, and because you're only using that the Web IDE part of the platform.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so a question from Michael, which has also already been responded to, that 1.23 didn't have the extension import manager, and Shane replied, yes, it is in 1.25, which is
That's right.
imminent, its release. So as Dong mentioned at the start of the webinar, there are some forward-looking statements here, but some of the technologies here are planned for Lumira 1.25, and stay tuned. The announcement will be very shortly delivered.
Yes. And in 125, just to add to that, in 125, from the extension perspective, we're not just introducing the extension manager, but also from an SDK perspective, we're not just providing a function parity in Web IDE as opposed to the built-in VizPacker. We're also adding capabilities to the SDK, including things like custom properties that you can put into your chart and data filters.
Okay, thank you. And there's a couple of questions coming in, one from Damien and one from Jack. We are at the top of the hour, but we'll stay on for a couple of minutes. So a question from Damien Fox. Any idea when SAP will start publishing certified Lumira extensions via the SAP Marketplace for general consumption?
Yes, so this is a work in progress. I can't comment on the exact timeline, but this is definitely something that we have been thinking about and actively worked on. So if you look at the current extension manager, it's not just for manual installation of your visualization extensions. It also allows you to download visualization extensions, and there is also a link to get partner extensions, where it launches a link to certified extensions from partners. But this is still in its early stage. But you will see more and more extensions coming, and a more streamlined process of retrieving, discovering, and paying for extensions that come from the community.
Okay.
So definitely stay tuned. This is something that is changing rapidly on a daily basis.
Sounds like a topic for a future webinar, Don. So,
yes.
Yes. So it looks like Jack had a question. Any plans to have these libraries embedded in Lumira rather than creating extensions?
Well, we do have D3 library built into Lumira, so you can always use D3 without adding any libraries, but you do need to create the charts based on D3. And as I have demonstrated in today's session, you don't have to build this chart from scratch. You can import it. Or copy paste like 90% of the code from the D3 website in this case, and then just hook it up with your Lumira environment, which is number one, connected to the data feed from Lumira, and number two, connected to the Lumira's canvas. That's it. You don't have to do a tremendous amount of work to convert that chart. Of course, if you're using a different library, your mileage may vary there. But overall, I would prefer reusing charts rather than building it from scratch, if at all possible. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, everyone, for participation. I hope you enjoyed it.